The Kings get their most impressive win in a while, and they do it against the top team in the West. That, and it's a Feedback Friday on this edition of Locked On LA Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Kings fans, welcome to Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On LA Kings your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. We would love for you to leave us a positive comment on Apple Podcasts if you're a fan of the show. And we are on YouTube. Please like and subscribe if you're enjoying this content. I'm Eddie Garcia, your host of Locked On LA Kings. I've worked in sports media for the past 30 years, 20 plus years at the Fox Sports Radio Network. I'm also co-host of the Puck Podcast. It's a weekly NHL review show that's been putting out content for the past 17 years and a passionate LA Kings fan for over 30 years. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Well, in the final game of a 3-game road trip through Western Canada, the Kings played a full 60-minute game and knocked off the top team in the West, the Vancouver Canucks, 5-1. Before we get into the wonderful details of this great win, let's check out the Kings lineup for this game because it was a bit different than something we've seen this year for the Kings. Under Coach Jim Hiller, the Kings utilized an 11-7 matchup. That's 11 forwards and 7 defensemen. Arthur Kallio was the lone Kings player on the roster not to dress for the game. And we've seen this maybe once before under Todd McClellan earlier in the year, I think. But this is a different look for the Kings. Obviously, they had one extra defenseman and one fewer forward. So guys like Quinton Byfield got extra ice time in this one. And obviously, things worked out pretty well. And I would not be surprised to see this setup going forward because it worked so well. Why not at least try it one more time? As for the recap of the game, if you missed it, LA would score the only goal of the opening period. Drew Doughty unleashing a point shot for his 14th goal of the season. Kevin Fiala and Trevor Moore had the assists. Second period, the captain Anze Kopitar would extend the lead to 2-0. Quinton Byfield and Drew Doughty assisting on that goal. Third period, the Canucks would score on the power play to make it 2-1, but the Kings would respond shortly thereafter with their own power play goal. Kevin Fiala scored it. Anze Kopitar and Drew Doughty with the assists, and the Kings had a 3-1 lead. Brandt Clarke would score his second of the season. Quinton Byfield and Trevor Lewis with the assists, and then Trevor Moore would add the dagger, his team-leading 23rd goal of the season. Kevin Fiala with the assists, and the Kings skate off with a convincing 5-1 victory. As for the game stats in this one, Kings win big on the scoreboard. The stats don't really tell the story. Shots on goal, only 20 for LA, 23 for Vancouver. Power plays were pretty much even. 1 for 2 for the Kings, 1 for 3 for Vancouver. Faceoffs won did favor the Kings 28-25. The one stat, though, that stands out, blocked shots. LA 23 to Vancouver's 6. And in the hit department, that did favor the Canucks 33-24. The coach of the Kings, Jim Hiller, talking about the effort in this one, which was clearly one of the best efforts, one of the best performances for the Kings in a while. And he had this to say about it, quote, "I thought we played really well. I mean, we played really well in Edmonton for 2 periods. We talked about it, didn't have a great third. In Calgary, we were slow. We got better. I thought tonight was probably 1 through 60, our best game, our most complete game anyway, since I've taken over." Well, I don't think there's any question about that. And I would say this performance is up there with the best performances of the season for the LA Kings. Now, was it the best of the year? I don't know if I'd go that far, but it was among the best performances of the year for the LA Kings. I think that there's no question that it's the best game they played under Jim Hiller. It's certainly the best game they played in a while. A full 60 minutes, as the coach said, of hockey for the Kings. It wasn't just a good first and second period. It wasn't a bad start, and they got better as they went along, but they'd already dug themselves a hole. This was from the start to the finish, a complete game for the Kings, and they do it against the top team in the Western Conference. Kings get their 30th win of the season. They're now 30, 19, and 10, 70 points. And when you look at the 3 stars of the game in this one was tough. I thought Cam Talbot had a very strong game in net. Now, he wasn't tested a lot by Vancouver, frankly, because of the good defense that the Kings played. So he didn't have to make any really, really strong grade A chances, but he stopped the pucks he had to and had a solid game. Trevor Moore had a goal and assist. He was very good. He had a lot of block shots as well. Quentin Byfield had a very strong game for the LA Kings. You could certainly make an argument he deserved to be one of the 3 stars for the Kings. He led all forwards with ice time, 22 minutes, 49 seconds. So he was the real beneficiary of that 11-7 setup for the Kings. He had 2 primary assists, had the primary assist on the Kopitar goal, had the primary assist on the Brandt Clark goal. Quentin Byfield had a phenomenal game. We'll talk more about him in a bit. But my 3 stars of the game for the win over Vancouver, I'm going to go for my number 3 star, Anze Kopitar, the captain, with a goal and an assist. His assist, a beautiful give and go with Kevin Fiala. Just great vision. It was a pass from almost from the blue line to Fiala, who was crashing the net, and the Canucks just kind of forgot about him. That was a fantastic pass by Anze Kopitar, and then getting a goal as well. So I'm giving Kopi my number 3 star. Number 2 star, and again, this is a debate between who's the top star and who's the number 2 star, but I'm going to go with Kevin Fiala with a goal and 2 assists. Fiala leading the team right now, which is big for him to step up in the absence of Adrian Kempe. 5 goals in 6 games now for Fiala. His 52 points have now overtaken Adrian Kempe, and he's now the leading scorer on the team, the leading assist man as well. He had the primary assist on the Drew Doughty goal and the primary assist on the Trevor Moore goal as well. But I'm going to go with Drew Doughty as my number 1 star. 1 goal and 2 assists, gets the Kings on the board to start it off. Also moved into 2nd place in the NHL as far as overall goals by a defenseman with 14 on the year. He's only 1 off the NHL lead for most goals by a defenseman. That might be something a lot of people didn't know. He's having he's among the top goal scorers from the blue line in the NHL. He also picked up his 500th career assist in this game with one of his 2 helpers. He is the first Kings defenseman ever to have 500 career assists. Of course, he led all players with time on ice, 25 minutes and 22 seconds. So again, you love it when you've got multiple guys that you're trying to kind of almost split hairs with. That could be the 3 stars. Quentin Byfield, again, could have very easily been on that list, but good to see some of the big stars, some of the big horses for the Kings coming through in Doughty and Fiala and Kopitar. As far as the pluses and minus in this one, I mean, the pluses are pretty obvious. A great 60-minute game, a great team effort. Pretty much everybody contributing in this one in some way or another. And when you have a great team effort, it makes it look so much easier. And I think one thing that's interesting, remember we had the comment from Drew Doughty about the cookie night and all that kind of stuff. I think this was a great, and I don't think there are Kings players who are selfishly looking to do things because they want better stats. I mean, look, every player wants to have good stats. I think when the Kings have kind of gotten out of their team game and gotten a little bit more individual, I think it's out of I think it comes from a good place, right? It's guys that want to step up and do well for the team, and sometimes maybe they get out of the team concept a little bit. I think this game was a great example of everybody playing the team game, but the individuals can still shine in those moments. We saw it from Kevin Fiala. He played a great team game, but he still had a great individual game as well. He still was able to show off his great individual skills. So you can still play a good team game and still have a good game as an individual. So I thought this was a great example of that, if you needed an example of that. And I think one of the moments, though, that I really loved was it's 2-1. Vancouver scores on the power play early in a period. It's like, okay, it was in the second period. It's like, okay, the crowd started to get in a little bit, and the Kings responded immediately with a power play goal of their own, made it a two-goal advantage again. And I loved that response from the Kings to score against the team that just scored against them and take that momentum right away from them. As far as the minuses go, obviously the Kings didn't play a perfect game. Nobody ever does. There were, of course, mistakes made here and there. There were a couple of penalties taken here and there. But overall, on the whole, really find it difficult to find any minuses from this game against the Canucks. That's how good of a game it was for the LA Kings. And as some will say, Vancouver's not playing their best hockey right now. They're in a bit of a slump for them. I don't care. The Kings aren't 100%. The Kings have some key players out due to injury. So not everything's going right for LA right now. So I'm not going to discount this very good game by the Kings against a very good team in Vancouver because the Canucks maybe aren't playing their best hockey of the year right now. I get that. That's not unfair. But again, it's not like the Kings are operating on all cylinders right now either. So I thought a great win for the LA Kings. We're going to get to your emails, and we also have some maybe positive injury news to tell you about involving the Kings. That's next here on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. Hey, get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Bet on all your favorite NBA and NHL players and teams with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and more. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. And you know this show gives you a lot of in-depth analysis and sometimes a few hot takes. Let me give you my hottest take of the day. The best lineup in LA right now is the lineup of auto loans at Logix. They start off at the top with my favorite, the proven and dependable new and used vehicle loans. You can count on these guys to give you low rates and save you big time bucks. Up next, they've got their new and exciting rookie sensation, their electric vehicle loans with super low rates and flexible payment terms. Rounding out their lineup, they've got their auto refinancing loans and lease buyout loans. With these guys, you could lower your monthly payment and get on the road to owning your car faster. I know it's a hot take, but seriously, no one can beat the lineup at Logix. Visit your local Logix branch right here in LA and the surrounding areas and let one of their amazing team members help you, or just apply online in minutes at logixbanking.com/car/car. That's Logix, Logix, banking.com/car. Well, we have our daily question. Do we have any injury updates? And the answer is maybe. According to John Hoven over at mayorsmanor.com, Carl Grundstrom, who's in a walking boot, and Victor Arvidsson could both be back in 4 to 6 weeks. Now, if you're looking at the 6-week range, that projects to be returning in the second to last week of the regular season. They also reported the Kings have received positive news on Adrian Kempe. The initial timeline for him was also 4 to 6 weeks, but after an MRI, they report that it's more like 2 to 3 weeks. That would bring Kempe in 3 weeks, would be the end of this coming month. We are now in March. And Mikey Anderson is thought to be ready to return around that time as well. So if that reporting is accurate, and we certainly hope it is, that does answer the big question. Will Victor Arvidsson, will Adrian Kempe be back for the playoffs? It appears the answer is yes, which would obviously be huge news and affect what the Kings plan to do at the trade deadline. Before we get into your emails, did want to check the standings in the Pacific Division and the Western Conference playoff race. So Vancouver, 83 points to lead the West and the Pacific. Vegas lost to Boston last night, so they're still at 73 points. The Edmonton Oilers are at 72, and then the Kings, with that win over Vancouver, at 70 points. So right now, LA 2 points behind Edmonton for third in the Pacific and 3 points behind Vegas for second in the Pacific. As for the wild card race, Nashville did win over Minnesota, so they still have 70 points as well. They could have overtaken the Kings if the Kings had lost, but they didn't. So LA still has the number 1 wild card spot. Nashville still has the number 2 wild card spot, and both Nashville and LA are now 7 points clear of Calgary, which is the first team on the outside looking in at a playoff spot in the West. The Kings, again, remaining the number 1 wildcard spot. Now, if the playoffs started today, the Kings would actually be facing now the Dallas Stars in the first round because the Stars beat the Jets last night to move into first place in the Central Division. All right, it is a Kings Fan Feedback Friday. Let's get to your emails. They are being read in the order in which they were received. Some of them might have been edited a little bit for time reasons. Our first email comes from James in Simi Valley. He says, I found your podcast just after the season started. I've been an everydayer ever since then, and I eagerly await every afternoon when the podcast drops. Well, glad to hear it. He says, I've never written in to you, but I feel I had to because during your second segment on Tuesday's show, I nearly drove into the center divider on my way home. when you said the person that needs to step up in Adrian Kempe's absence is Quinton Byfield. Are you serious? Now, granted, there will end up being 2 games before you end up reading this on the air, so we'll see what QB does against Calgary and Vancouver. But that was your pick as to who needs to step up in Kempe's absence. Putting aside the unbelievable goal of the year he scored against Columbus, that actually made all the sports shows on the networks and typically does not air hockey highlights, even though they are airing the Stanley Cup Finals. You didn't even mention the unbelievable pass he made on Trevor Moore's goal in the Edmonton game. Who else has the foresight to even make that play? The same day you said that QB needs to step up in Kempe's absence, he only had 8 points back of Kempe for the team lead, 5 points more than Trevor Moore, 11 points more than Philip Deneau. We don't even need to mention PLD. Prior to Tuesday's game, he was only 4 goals behind Moore for the team lead, ahead of Kopitar, Fiala, PLD, and Deneau. Oh yeah, as flawed a stat as it may sometimes be, he leads the team in plus minus. Thankfully, I did not hit the center median on my way home from work on Tuesday with those comments. Stunned me to my core. He needs to know he is not along for the ride anymore. Take a step up. Kings need to rely on him for offense. Step up and make some plays and contribute statistically. All your words, Eddie. I am stunned you would have said these statements about the biggest surprise on the Kings season. Well, I am very happy, James, you did not drive your car off the road. I don't think my statements were shocking, but I guess I understand where you're coming from. Certainly what I said was in no way to imply that Q hasn't been amazing this season. I've said multiple times, my favorite thing so far this year is seeing Quinton Byfield blossom into a very good player. My only point is, and this is a compliment to Byfield, I think he can give us more. And I think if you're Jim Hiller, part of your job as a coach is to get the most that you can out of your players. I could understand if Q is content with what he's given. And I wouldn't blame him one bit if he was. He's had a great season and he's putting up stats. You're right. That said, when you lose a guy like Adrian Kempe, other players do need to step up when it's your leading scorer out of the lineup. And I don't think it's too much to ask Q that he can give us a little more. I think if I was Jim Hiller, I would have went to Quinton Byfield and in a very positive way challenged him to give us more, to be more aggressive going to the net, to get more shots on goal. Look, if he gives us what he's given us all season the rest of the way, I'm not going to be disappointed. But I think it's a compliment to Quinton Byfield to challenge him and tell him, I really think you can give us a little more. I think you're that talented. I think you're that good. I think you're having that good of a season. So that's where I was coming from with the Quinton Byfield statement. Not that he hasn't been great for us this year. He has. But let's get a little more. Is that a bad thing to ask? I don't think so. This comes from Mike in Reno. He says, I was rereading an article by Zach Dooley that came out February 22nd titled, Pierre-Luc Dubois continues to answer the challenge coming out of the All-Star break. It's sad that 8 days after this article was written, we are talking about and reading articles about PLD's issues again. Lack of defensive play, uninspired, unmotivated, unengaged, and not a difference maker. More to the point, PLD looks like he just doesn't care. The knocks on him before the trade was made were 100% accurate, and Luke and Blake completely ignored them. The guy has got his money and then proved one thing. He shows up when he feels like it. I was so hopeful after Hiller took over that PLD was having fun again. We all sold ourselves temporarily on the idea that maybe PLD was just needing to play better with better talent on his wings, or he just needs a different coach. Things started off great with Hiller. QB then gets put on his wing, and for a handful of games, we got to see the raw talent this guy has. But then we all painfully realized the challenge wasn't really answered, and we are right back to the crap effort he showed under McClellan. I don't think PLD deserves anyone coming to his defense until this guy shows he can put a consistent quality effort on a regular basis. It's incredibly frustrating as a fan to watch. I hear you on that to a point. I do think he started playing better after the coaching change. I will say he didn't do much in the game against Vancouver. Again, for me personally, and I get the criticisms of Pierre-Luc Dubois, I'm not going to really judge him until I get to see him play with somebody on his wing who can really complement him. He's not really a third line center, and maybe it seems like I'm making excuses for him. And I don't disagree that there are times when it does look like he's not interested. But I don't know. I just think the circumstances he's found himself in probably are not what he thought they would be. Now that shouldn't matter. especially as people have mentioned with the money that he's being paid. He should, if he plays on the fourth line, he should be busting his ass at all times. But it's getting, for me as a Kings fan, I can understand why people are continually frustrated with him. It's not unfair, but it's getting a little old for me as well. I'm kind of tired of hearing it at this point, but I get it. I get why some people are so frustrated with him. Real quick, this is from Drew in Costa Mesa. Did the Kings hold Arthur Kaliev out of the Canucks game because he's about to be traded? Yeah, obviously the trade deadline is coming up a week from today. And typically if a player is suddenly benched out of nowhere, you're thinking, obviously they don't want to play him because if he gets hurt, then they can't trade him. I don't have any indication that that's the case with Artie. And obviously he's been a healthy scratch many times over the last month or so. I know he's been brought up as somebody who's probably going to get traded, and I think he is going to get traded, but there's been no indication that he was held out of that Canucks game specifically because he is about to be traded. So I have not heard anything about that. And usually you do hear something when that's about to happen. We got more emails next here on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. You should not have to worry when you're buying tickets to your next event. I don't, because I use Gametime, the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all your sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. I used Gametime this year to buy tickets to NHL and NFL games, and I am a very satisfied customer. The app is very easy to navigate and use. They've got killer last-minute deals, all-in pricing, and the best price is guaranteed. Gametime is the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase, and I love how you can view your seat before you buy it. You know exactly the view you're going to get when you arrive. Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. All in prices show you the total up front. You know what you're getting, and there are no hidden fees. Buy tickets in seconds with 2 taps on the app. Just download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNHL, LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. The LA Kings face the New Jersey Devils Sunday afternoon, 12:30 Pacific time. Catch every moment of the hometown broadcast of your LA Kings with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Just search LA Kings, and I believe that's a TNT nationally televised game. I don't think there's any local TV for that one. So if you want to hear the Kings broadcast, got to go to SiriusXM and check that out. Let's continue with the emails. This comes from Saro Azizian. Hope I got that right, Saro. He didn't give his location, so I get to make it up. I'm going to say it's Sorrow in Santa Monica. He says, I'm a longtime Kings fan, fairly new listener to Locked On. I listen to just about every other Kings-related podcast available as well, and I really enjoy your content. I've been meaning to write in for a while now, mostly for fan feedback. I've written and deleted several different versions of this email to cover a variety of things, and I realize that everything I've written can be summed up in one question. I'm armchairing here a bit, but I'm curious, what are your thoughts on Blake and the organization as a whole, as far as evaluating talent? I know that only time will tell, but you can't build a successful team by signing $5, $6, $7 million free agents every year. You need your draft picks to perform. 4 picks in the top 50 in 2019, and I'm not sure if we'll get any NHL level talent. Anyway, really want to know your thoughts. I love listening to the podcast. Thank you. Appreciate, Sorrow, you finally getting a chance to write in. So if you look at any Stanley Cup winning team, you usually will see a core group of players that were drafted and developed in the organization, maybe 60 to 70% of your roster. And then you'll see players who were added via trades and free agency. And that was the case for the Kings during their 2012 and 2014 Cup runs. So you specifically wanted to know about the Kings talent evaluation. And if you look at the Kings' current roster, and I am including Victor Arvidsson on this, so you've got 23 players. 13 of the players are Kings drafted players, which is quite a bit. Currently on the Kings roster, they've got 4 players they've acquired via free agency and 5 they've acquired via trade. And I'm including Trevor Lewis in this, by the way, as a drafted player, even though he was signed as a free agent, but he was originally drafted by the Kings and developed. So 13 out of 23 players for the Kings on their current lineup are homegrown talent. So those are players that were drafted and developed and evaluated, and they're helping the Kings right now. Now, you specifically talked about the 2019 draft. The Kings had 4 picks in the top 50, Alex Turcotte, Tobias Bjornfot, Arthur Kaliev, and Samuel Fagemo. and you wondered if, let me get it correct. If let's see, sorry about that. I'm not sure if we'll get any NHL level talent. Well, Alex Turcotte's currently playing in the NHL with the Kings. Arthur Kaliev, although he's been a healthy scratch, is currently on the roster. And Samuel Fogmo appears to be on the cusp of being an NHL player with the numbers he's putting up in the AHL, just kind of not any room for him at the moment, I guess. You could argue he should be in there over Jared Anderson-Dolan. And Tobias Bjornfoot, it hasn't worked out in LA. He got claimed by Vegas, but I think he's an NHL caliber defenseman. I think he could be a third pairing defenseman on a lot of teams in the league. So all four of those guys are NHL level contributors. Now, maybe you think if you get 4 picks in the top 50, you should have gotten more impact out of those guys. Turcotte certainly has had the injury issues. That's not a development or a talent evaluation issue because he wasn't hurt until after they drafted him. So I don't have an issue with any of those players, frankly. And I think the Kings are, I think they're doing a solid job in drafting and developing talent, to be honest. Jeremiah, everydayer in Hawthorne, he says, pretty sad how the Kings have injuries right now. There are rumors that Rob Blake is trying to get Tyler Toffoli back. Also heard he's going to go all in at the trade deadline to save his job. I really hope he doesn't trade any good pieces. Why are they not playing Clark? Keep up the good work, Eddie. Go Kings, go. Let me know if you're going to be at the Vancouver game on Tuesday or the Chicago game. I would love to come up and say hi. Thank you, Jeremiah, for that. Because of my work schedule, I usually can only go to the games on the weekend. Not sure. I might be at the game on Sunday against the Devils. Looks like the next games I'll be at will be Dallas on Saturday, March the 9th, and Tampa Bay Saturday, March the 23rd. I'm going to hold off on answering some of your questions because we have a similar email from John in Illinois. He submitted this via X. He says, what would you do at the deadline? Part of me wants to sell, but with Blake's job on the line, we know that he'll be buying, especially with some gifted cap space available via LTIR. Toffoli to me is a great fit. If we move Roy, I'd go for Dumba. Clark just isn't there yet on the D side. A guy like Perron would be awesome, but I don't think Detroit will move him. Imagine heading into the playoffs with Dumba and Perron. What would your deadline plan be? Well, let's consider that the reporting by John Hoven is accurate, and he usually does a great job with his accuracy on those things. And again, that the answer to the question is Kempe and Arvidsson going to be back? Are they going to be back for the playoffs? If the answer is yes, and it appears that it will be, then yes, I am looking to add at the trade deadline. If I had gotten the answer that those two guys were done for the year, I would be looking to move Matt Roy and see what happens in the playoffs, but I'm not going to lose him for nothing because I don't think we're going to do anything in the playoffs without Kempe and Arvidsson. But if they're back, and I keep Arvidsson out for the rest of the season, I'm not going to bring him back for the final week of the regular season. I use the cap space to try and add players. Matt Dumba could be a possibility on the blue line. I don't think Detroit's getting rid of David Perron either, and I don't think New Jersey is getting rid of Tyler Toffoli as well. So that answers the question if he's going to come back and be reunited in LA. I don't see that happening. As far as Rob Blake going all in to save his job, I will say this. As a former Kings legend and player, and as a guy who has his jersey hanging in the rafters, I think he's more invested in the Kings organization than somebody would be otherwise. I don't think that he's going to do, and I don't think he would be allowed to basically just sell off key pieces of the team and first round picks right and left to go in on a pipe dream for this year. I could certainly see him trying to add some complementary pieces. I don't think the Kings are going to make any big time moves necessarily, but we'll see. He has shown that he can be bold at times, but I in my heart, I don't believe Rob Blake would do anything really, really stupid to save his job. I think he cares more about the organization than a guy otherwise would. If he was someone from the outside, then I could see some legitimacy in that, but I don't see that being the case with Rob Blake. But what I would do, again, yes, I would hold Arvidsson out for the rest of the season, use that cap space, and make some additions to the lineup, but I don't think it's going to be anything major. Edwin in Brea, I'm sorry we're out of time. Couldn't get to your email. You're still wrong, though, for being against the Kings dancing after wins. That's going to do it for this week's show. If you want to send an email for next week's show, the email address is lockedoneddie@gmail.com. You can leave your comments in the YouTube episodes as well. We'd love you to stay interactive with the show on social media, X, Twitter, Instagram, at Locked On LA Kings. Thank you to everyone who took the time to send in an email. Really appreciate it. The show isn't possible without your contributions. That's going to do it for today's show. We will talk to you next week here on Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Have a great weekend. We'll see you on Monday, hopefully talking about a win over the Devils. And as always, go Kings, go.